been a long and hard journey for our intrepid hero, one Nathan Drake. Many a path since trodden, explored, wandered, chased, shot, blown up. In fact, if you name it, he's been through it and back. He has grown as we the audience have with him, and his incredible adventures over 3.5 games, thus far complete. And after the events of 3, it seemed he'd settled down with Elena, become a family man, and gave up his treasure hunting days. But oh no. You can learn all about the game in my spoiler-free review, article and video, and its near rock-solid performance in my performance video. But here all bets are off, and we are going to explore the delights, treasures and treats the team at Naughty Dog have been cooking up over the last 4 years in this in-depth attention-to-detail analysis that I hope many of you have been looking forward to as much as I have in putting it together. So hopefully it won't let anyone down. To warn you, I have kept this as spoiler-free as possible, and nothing here will ruin the game, but please be warned that I have had no choice but to show you some small sections that you would not have seen before, but without context, it should only be very minor. I also warn you this is a long one, as I wanted to cover so much, but as I have a review also up, this will not encroach on gameplay, aside the technical aspect of it. So with our brother in tow, X marked on the map and the compass pointed towards adventure, as Jack Sparrow would say, bring me that horizon.
Sic parvis magna.
Sic parvis magna.
Yeah.
All that. What becomes very apparent the moment you play or watch this game is that the animation is simply on another level to nearly all current games. Hell, even big budget CGI movies will be happy with this, as the leap in memory from the last generation has enabled games to fill this space with a broader range of moves, bone rigging, blending to portray much more lifelike action. A new benchmark has been set with Uncharted 4 that, to put it bluntly, nothing else on the market at this point can touch it. The reasons are vast and exhaustive as to why, but I will cover some examples here to better describe and demonstrate just why that is the case. Bearing in mind, the view of the overall presentation is a subjective one. Inverse kinematics is not a new process in Uncharted games, or games in general, but the integration of it here is at the forefront of that. Simply that this is the method, or more accurately equation, of how limbs or joints operate and move to perform physical actions within a physical world, such as how limbs react to floors or ledges, the fingers of Nate gripping, bending and levering around the object he clings to with incredible accuracy. Hands roll and judder around bars as you swing. You can fine control the reach and location of your next grabbing point with the use of the analog sticks. Within the game's dramatic and fluid combat system, you can see the slips, shimmies and slides have both fluidity and weight that has been lacking in the past. When grabbed, armed contact and struggle in movement, actions all happen based on the motion, scenario and weapons, and much more at the time. Double teaming up when you combat, you can see the high keyframes used for each action, the almost seamless blending between sets, and the multiple pivot points on all characters. The engine now has a full physics system throughout pretty much all rendered objects that I cover later, but it is within its animation that you can see and feel this the most. Punches connect with a velocity not unlike The Last of Us, but here are less brutal but far more movie-like with momentum in action. Smashing through walls, kicking, strangling, even hanging onto feet to save themselves from a fatal fall. The sheer quantity of animation sets that the game has in memory and how seamlessly and dynamically they all flow is truly a defining feature of the game. As you explore, shoot, fight or climb, every movement and combat looks motion captured and staged, as nothing that looks this good, moves so fluidly, connects so inherently and feels so epic could ever be calculated on the fly. Could it?
Hey, good time.
Moving from animation, we already touched on the game's physics system animation that allows momentum to affect actions. From falling and fighting to shooting and explosions, you have just seen every encounter feels like a well-rehearsed action sequence from a summer blockbuster. and a huge portion of that is the game's physics system that I have talked about much before. Like other areas of the game in AI, lighting, geometry drawing and culling, the GPU of the PS4 is heavily leveraged to deliver the calculations per frame, and physics is yet another area to add to that, as confirmed by lead programmer Jason Gregory last year. What we have here is something rarely seen before at this level and complexity within a game of this sheer size, scale and scope. Best demonstrated in the E3 shown shootout, although there are more, the density of objects within the world is vast, from pots, pans, bottles, even fresh chicken and processed meat is not spared the ordeal of a potential circumcision within the Uncharted whirlwind. Bullets leave a trail in their wake and can break down or move objects as they impact. Cover points or walls prestigiously decay from gunshots or even being slammed into. Vehicles crumble on impact, buildings collapse, pillars are pulled down, rope bridges swing, sag and crumble, all within the on-screen action or triggered sections and more. But now is not the time for that. And the connection is they all look realistic and natural when they do, but this is all again a byproduct of Naughty Dog style for attention to detail and diversion of the eye. Again, using the memory now available, many of these techniques are not the result of a high caliber real-time calculation, but a mixture of real-time and baked solution. Damage on vehicles, for example, is based on vertex and skinning blends within the raw mesh, building this into the object and using the game's particle system to read from the buffer and blend between the two as each collision is recorded. Wind and force in the game is handled in a similar universal fashion, from trees, leaves, Nate's hair including chest, and clothing, allowing water to droop hair and the wind to push objects. With such a high foliage count, this is very welcome. But it is not only wind that can affect these, as explosions also do the same, flattening vines, pushing objects over or breaking down materials, all within play. Following on from this, floorboards or bridges dip and move underfoot, water and mud react to your passing, all using this mixture of blending and memory to deliver what is possibly the most organic and physical sets of locations I have ever enjoyed. In action, everything appears to react to you, enemies, NPCs and all the ensuing action it creates. Vines are pushed aside or struck with bullets, objects collapse, all with real world physics that really sell the setup. This carries over to vehicles that sag and bob from the natural and unnatural forces in play, combined with the animation system. As you can see, impacts, G-force, pushing turns and more all carry the movement within. And this leaves such a lasting and convincing feeling that aside from obvious ignorance to the game's physics at times for plot use, you are simply convinced by the organic nature of the game. And this is not only a great showpiece and technical marvel, but it also helps improve the gameplay and set pieces. Lighting is an area that has always been a big part of Naughty Dog's aims for each of its games, and this comes from direct and indirect lighting, ambient occlusion, or contact within objects and characters within the ambient world. But in this latest title, the engine has received a huge update, and its lighting model is not only a generational leap over its previous games, but now is leading edge in many ways. This comes in various areas that I will cover, and the first, like most areas of their games, is the progression and refinement of previous ones. Ambient occlusion is the self-shadowing or contact sections within objects that may not come from direct light sources, meaning that areas being occluded or blocking the light to cast a shadow. The contact system covers all characters in the game using a low-level LOD and shader process to build the proxy capsules covering limbs, head and torso. These are then used for the shadow system in addition to the standard shadow maps to emerge against scenery as they draw near. It is again used to reflect the characters in the world from puddles, metal pipes and more, as I covered in the multiplayer beta. A resounding success that helps ground all characters within the world. But the lighting overall is both rich, diverse and dynamic, using the deferred engine base to handle huge amounts of light sources and a range of light methods from area lights, point lights and directional, and obviously the in vogue global illumination. But this is where it really shines. As I covered in the Madagascar footage, sunlight throughout the game is handled with direct and indirect light bouncing and reflecting off of floors and the accompanying radiosity that this incurs. Image-based lighting is the most likely candidate to handle much of this, and light maps to create the bounce source. This gives grass edges a red hue from the sand or characters a green tint as required, in conjunction within the pixel precision that saturates areas with light, further enhanced by bloom and tone mapping within its HDR corrected pipeline to emulate the eye's correction from intense light sources. Its quality and coverage is both high and accurate, as you see soft ambient light seep into caves or torch lights bounce around a cavernous space. enhanced further with its liberal use of volumetric lighting. As I have already covered, the lighting mod, like some of the shadows in the game, do seem to use a reconstruction technique that improves the quality over multiple frames. Now this can be hard to spot, and the stippled mosaic look that occasionally occurs is a fair trade, and like I say, many will not even notice. All this is enhanced further with the physically based material light consumption system that handles all objects' material properties with reflection and absorption levels, i.e. specular and diffuse properties, resulting in a rich and accurate representation of a broad spectrum of objects as wood, stone, grass, moss, denim all behave in a more convincing manner. But it gets even better, and again is an enhancement from the team's last game, as the much used torchlight is now a fully dynamic source and behaves in the most realistic way yet. Itself now giving off at least one but possibly multiple light bounces and attenuation relevant to distance and source. As you can see from the on-screen examples, the torchlight bounces off the cave wall and brightens the floor as I walk towards it, and fades out as I walk away. Again here the light bounce fades away as I enter the tunnel, leaving the softer natural light behind. It is not only creating this bounce but also brings with it the reflected source colour when visible. Here you can see the specular highlights on the basalt columns from the bounced torchlight, but again against the gold plate of the chest, the floor receives the soft golden glow from its bounce, as does Nate's legs. Again the green chest leaves a faint green hue as the global illumination samples the colour and light direction. All these areas combined create possibly the most impressive lighting element in any game, as very quickly you are convinced of the light in the game. Walking into a natural lit area, your torchlight is overpowered and fades. Shadows are of the stencil variety here, giving penumbra edges and scaling from the light source, with a flame sourced area light casting shadows in all directions. And not just indoors, as later sections ramp this up as weather conditions change, you get cloud shadows, blazing sun and more. Even the laser sight of the snipers bounces off you and reflects around the area you're sitting in, so impressively detailed. A shining beacon in the future of games lighting, and this game better than many shows how important lighting is to improve and create the visual punch, and the real-time cutscenes ramp this up further still. Combining the Disney or DreamWorks animation method earlier with a new facial capture system that uses cameras, PBR pipeline and the aforementioned lighting system, you have a recipe for some truly bar-raising sections, and it was never in question that Naughty Dog would not achieve that goal. I do not exaggerate when I say the game has some sections that could and will be confused with pre-rendered CGI, as the mixture of high bone rigs, vast polygon topology, realistic lighting and near Pixar level shaders from actual Disney talent Yibing Zhang, topped off with the animation Nate, has never looked so mean, moody and sexy. And all the cast are treated to the same high level. Over and over again you will sit and watch these sequences in sheer amazement, only to realise you've been handed back the controls. And from the opening section that will leave your jaw on the floor, it keeps on delivering, and as expected, the teaser section is not in the final game, but what takes its place is so much better and more fitting, but you can judge that for yourself. Skin and muscle deformation can be clearly seen in necks, wrists, even rubbing faces. It looks incredible, but all the touches in these scenes add up. Specular in eyes, mobile phones lighting up parts of faces, water running off of objects. The intricate detail they delve into is truly incredible and impeccable. At this point it would be enough for most games to call it a day, but it just keeps on giving from its improved decal system, allowing shaders to add or reveal dirt, water and damage procedurally as you play, and even dry or be washed off. Subsurface scattering is used in both cutscenes and gameplay, penetrating hands, ears, leaves, and as the models are the same, you get to view the details like this from game to cutscene as you play. The only change being additional shaders, lighting and obvious animations. This is all rendered at a native 1920 by 1080 display and backed up with another high point of the team's own temporal AA solution that works incredibly well, smoothing out the motion but not blurring the screen or textures to a degree that will offend anyone. It does remove many of the signs that this is a real-time game, as shimmer, pixel pop and such are mostly removed in action unless you hunt at the distant objects. The coverage manages to clean up most frequency issues, and in addition with the included photo mode you can create some absolutely sumptuous shots, and I'm sure many of you will. And when it comes to the real-time cinematics, it really impresses, as many of them actually do look like CGI, and the opening section is a superb example of that. And when it rains, it pours. Image quality is yet another high point, and like most aspects of the game, all works towards the same goal of its eye-watering presentation. Within the expansive levels and hugely enjoyable action, the balance of techniques is impressively managed as dust clouds sample both light and shadow maps, no matter how small the plume. Parallax occlusion mapping is sparingly used in sections to add extra depth to cavernous areas, with it supporting self-shadowing to assist its impact. Screen space reflections are also used in the game with a decent resolution, and in some of the bigger areas leaving just the proxy capsules and cube maps. Depth of field is used in gameplay and cutscenes with bokeh. It's also a good example to show the delayed shader passes, as you can see the bokeh fade in as the shot changes. Also, the ever-present motion blur is the best the team have yet created. Handling velocity and per object, it improves speed in the vehicle sections or fast camera movement, smoothing out limbs in action, and as you decimate the shoreline enemies, it can never be under-egged how much it makes this not only the best looking Uncharted or Naughty Dog game ever, but the smoothest. And yes, even coming off the recent remasters for the PS4, the comparison does not flatter them at all. And when you add in control and combat, it is a whitewash for Uncharted 4, and a resounding success for the team. Gobsmacking? You bet your ass. It's still impressive with its use of Houdini solutions within the game, as we saw from Sam's Chase, and also other parts of the game using a liquid simulation for smoke effects in the combat, and in some of the bigger set pieces. They all fit seamlessly into the game and work incredibly well. It does have some small niggles that I should cover in this type of analysis. Alpha effects on water splashes can look weak and even misplaced at times. Also, polygon counts in the levels are managed at various degrees, and in some locations the lack of vertices can lower the quality of these, but like most things, it is a compromise, with characters, vehicles and such sporting the lion's share. AI is one of the game's strongest points, and is thankfully affected by the difficulty being more aggressive, visible and accurate the higher up you go. It is not aiming for the same level of The Last of Us, and the encounters are of a different variety, so you cannot throw objects to distract here, and they may never seem to work in such a coordinated way as that game, but I'm sure most of that is by design. As this is aiming for a blockbuster action delivery, it cannot centre on stealth. That said, they are impressive, as they can take the same paths as you, flank you, grab you, and have the same level of passive conversation to back up their characters, just like the system employed within Joel's adventures.
Supposed to stick around.
And the general
Didn't even last the night.
Get the left one. I got
Nadine
right.
says business is business.
whatever gets us more action.
It makes the encounters the most fun in the game, as they react to your actions, investigate noise, run for cover when shot at, team up, throw in the sheer scale of the action and interaction as bullets start flying from both sides, leaving physics and procedural destruction in its wake. You never feel anything but impressed. Remember, stealth is always an option.
They're right here! Here we go!
The buddy system is equally as impressive, with many great conversations happening throughout play and resuming very naturally when rudely interrupted. The combat side is a mixture though, with it being both helpful and hindrance at times, but overall it's another benefit. Sound is of a very high production in both voicing, dialogue, impacts, gunshots, punches. Everything is of a high design and production value, and with a decent surround system, it sounds impeccable. Hardcore enthusiasts though may bemoan the fact that there's not that much music throughout, and what there is dynamic to your action. You won't hear Nate's theme very often throughout the game, but in some ways it's better for it because you get to hear sound effects and ricochets like this. Water and Light continues its impressive engine demo, I am sure not a million miles away from Drive Club, that handle light reflecting and refracting through and over its surfaces. Ice sculptures distort and bend light as it passes through. Water has multiple levels of shaders, handling surface tension, reflection, all within its tessellated surface. But once you go under it, then the results speak for themselves, allowing portions of light to seep through and refract, whilst reflecting the objects and light underneath. Caustics bounce up onto cave walls, light bounces onto other objects from its surface, with the game's volumetric lighting used well across the game, seeping in from caves, searchlights. It also handles volumetric shadows in the water from the boats, and mixed with multiple shader passes, reflections and refraction system. It is such inviting looking water, you'll want to dive in. And one can only guess where some of the inspiration came from. Well, they're both assassins after all. I have missed much more in the game, and that is as much by design as time, as you need to enjoy all this yourself, and this really truly is a new benchmark in what has been delivered here, combining the balance of technique, art, style and function into what is a defining game for the PS4 and possibly the generation. It is still an Uncharted game at its heart, but both slower and faster, older and wiser, larger and more diverse than ever before. With no stone unturned, Naughty Dog has delivered a poetic and fitting end for Drake's adventures in a world far, far bigger, even more beautiful, striking, dynamic, and on such a vast scale that many would have ever hoped for. It takes time to fathom. This is not only the best looking Naughty Dog game so far, it is possibly the best looking game this generation. And you just wait to that last chapter. As always, I hope you guys and girls enjoyed this. If you did, or anything else that I've put together, then please check out my review and performance videos and more on my site, along with hitting that like and subscribe button. I will have the multiplayer analysis up after the game has released, and if you want to play with me, please add me on. My PSN tag is on the screen. Follow me on Twitter and enjoy your time as Nate, Sam and Sully and crew suit up and sail for one last time into the sunset. It's a ride you will not want to miss. I'll see you all very soon on the next one, and of course, in Uncharted.